Welcome. If you've joined me from part one, this is part two of just pretty much the basics of astrology and sort of the beginnings of it. So, you want to understand the houses, right? So, what is a house in astrology? A house in astrology is a specific section of the natal chart that has been separated, which contains its own themes and planetary ruler. We, as astrologers, use these houses to break up the flow of energy between the signs, giving us a greater accuracy and understanding. I generally say all this because when the signs change, when we feel the signs change, we don't feel it immediately. We feel it gradually until it engulfs us, and then we feel only that energy, and usually by that point, the energy is more so background and we're used to it. But generally, nothing is ever as sharply as it seems, right? So, you know, obviously this is a natal sun, but like I said, the sun here, right? Our sun, like right now, the current sun goes from Leo into Virgo. We're not going to feel a clear separation of that energy right when it passes into Virgo. We're going to feel it gradually until that energy of the Leo energy is completely gone, because the Virgo energy is the main energy here, right? So before I continue, the main purpose of this is just to go over the houses and get a better understanding of it. We're going to go through each house, why each house is important, and generally what the houses pertain to, right? Because each house has a ruler and each house is associated with a sign and has to do with different parts of your chart, right? So let's get into this. First house is Aries. It's the self. It has to do with your identity, your ego, your appearance, right? Your ascendant is right here. This is why it's very important, because your ascendant is where the start of your first house is, and your ascendant affects your looks. Generally, it affects how you see things and how people see you, right? Also, for each, like I said, each sign house has a ruler, and for your ascendant, it's Mars, right? So, second house, Taurus. Taurus represents, right? Second house represents material possessions. It represents money, self worth, general stability, things of that nature. Sometimes when you have certain transits going through your second house, you might feel a change in your self worth or your security as a person individually. I think it's very important that we acknowledge that, because a lot of people tend to forget that it has a lot to do with how you feel as like self-worth in general, like in terms of life and the things you have and the things you don't have. It does affect you mentally, and it does affect your self-esteem, and this is why second house is really important for that, and this is why it represents that. So moving on, third house. Also, second house is ruled by Venus. Forgot to mention that. Third house, right? Third house is Gemini. Third house is ruled by Mercury. Has to do with communications. Has to do with your siblings, the mind. Has to do with neighbors, and I think it's really important to look at it in a person's chart, because it really often explains or kind of shows how a person puts their words together. Not necessarily how it sounds and how it comes off. I look more towards the ascendant for that. But excuse me, it generally, third house generally kind of shows how a person's, how they put sentences together. You know, how they put their words together. Are they harsh when they talk? Are they blunt? They may sound harsh or blunt with the way they say words based off their ascendant, but the words they use, the language they use, is important for the third house, right? Like me, I have a Capricorn stellium, right? And we'll get into that later on. But just to give a quick definition of it, it's three or more planets or in one sign or a house. And the thing is, so I'm a Saturn dominant person, right? Capricorn energy. Probably can hear it in my voice. But the thing is, I have Saturn in my third house in the sign of Aries. So sometimes I can be quite blunt or harsh when I talk, the way I put my words together. On top of that, it affects how your mind thinks. And generally, I would say my mind is stable in terms of my thinking. I don't tend to go too radical in either or direction. But obviously, for all of this, you have to pay attention to aspects. Aspects are very important. Aspects are going to tell you the nuances between things and how things are sort of lined up what affects what. So it's important to pay attention to that. But right now we're just talking about the houses. So fourth house, right? Fourth house is Cancer. Fourth house is the moon. Moon rules the fourth house, right? I said fourth house. I circled the third house, but yeah, fourth house, right? In your fourth house, your IC. Your IC is the beginning of your fourth house, right? So your IC is your IC kind of talks about your personal life, your home life, the things, how you grew up and things of that nature. It really, all the general themes of the fourth house line up with the IC. It is generally one and the same. Just like you have your ascendant is your first house, your descendant, right there, all that stuff. It's opposite of your midheaven, your MC, right here. And we'll get into that later on because we have to explain the 10th house as well. But generally, it's all the same things of the moon, your personal life. This is what people are going to see behind closed doors. This is what people who really get to know you are going to see. And it obviously affects what makes you feel comfortable and nurtured, right? This is very important. Fourth house and IC really has to do with what makes you feel nurtured and comfortable and relaxed. And generally, those type of things are going to affect, your life as a whole, right? And how you operate and how you move through life. Taurus generally can do this too, because Taurus has something to do with comfort as well. Very important comfort, when it comes to comfortability. But generally, if you want to look for those type of things in a person's life, look at the fourth house, look at their moon, look at their IC. These all are the same general themes, considering that they all are associated with each other. So, moving on, fifth house. Fifth house is Leo energy. Fifth house is ruled by the sun. Fifth house has to do with romance, sex, in some ways, like the good parts of it. Not the parts that Scorpio rules, but the good parts of it, the enjoyable parts of it. Children, creativity as a whole. And for me personally, from the things I've experienced, it really just kind of be general fun, lightheartedness, a lot of love, a lot of warmth. That's just what Leo is about. That's what fifth house is about. And oftentimes it has to do with the children you have, the family you have, not the family you grew up with, but you grow up, you have your family that, you were born with. That's fourth house. And then you get older, you meet somebody, you have children, yada, yada, yada. This represents that family more, right? Like this person, I think, would have an okay family life. They would have, the Capricorn isn't great and Aquarius isn't necessarily the best thing, but that fifth house there is, the moon there is warm and comfortable. It kind of works with it, So moving on, sixth house. Sixth house is Virgo energy. Sixth house is also ruled by Mercury. Has to do with health, work. In some cases, small animals. I've noticed this with transits with people when, from reading charts, that sometimes someone could have a negative transit fall in their sixth house, and they could have something like they have to put down a pet, or something happens with one of their pets or something. Now, generally it rules small animals, and usually people just say pets, but it can mean any sort of small animal, ants, any sort of small creature, ants, spiders, whatever, just small living creatures, that are not plants, obviously, just animals. So moving on, your seventh house, your descendant, right? Your descendant is obviously very important. I like to say it's just as important as your ascendant, right? It's opposite of the first house. You can generally take all the themes of Aries in first house and just invert that, and that will be your descendant here, right? It has to do with marriage, has to do with partnerships. And when I say partnerships, it doesn't just mean romantic either. It could be business partnerships. Sometimes it has an effect on money. Open enemies, relating to yourself through others, I think is very important, because the whole thing goes full circle. Obviously, the whole chart is a whole chart. It goes full circle and everything affects everything within it, and because it's on the opposite, it's just like having the IC in the midheaven, right? Your ascendant affects your descendant affects your ascendant. And how you relate to others is quite often the way you relate to others because of how you relate to yourself. And you see it in relationships and how people treat each other, where you'll have instances where someone treats someone not the best way, and it's not because the person they're treating bad is bad, it's because they have not the greatest relationship with themselves. So I say with themselves, this would be themselves. So it all kind of goes full circle. But very importantly, this tends to be the area, seventh house is the type of people you'll find attractive. I say generally the type of people you'll find attractive in romance, which I'll probably do a video on that at some point. It'll be fifth house, seventh house, eighth house, and 11th house. These are generally the type of people you're going to find attractive. I can say third to some extent because it kind of gives that sort of sibling friend, sort of comfortable friend sort of vibe. Same thing with 11th house. Fifth house is romance, and seventh house is, partnerships and marriage. Usually, a lot of people wouldn't realize it, but someone's ascendant might fall in their seventh house, the person you marry, or they might have a part of their big three there. I know generally for me, I don't have any planets there, and neither does, John Doe up here, this random chart I made. So they would generally probably be very attracted to Pisces people. It's the same way for me where I have a lot of Capricorn, so generally I'm very attracted to Cancers. I don't have anything else there, so there's nothing that sort of alters my attraction for them. It's just generally Cancers and generally Libras, but we kind of have to get into that a little later on. So yeah, that's seventh house. Eighth house. Eighth house is the scary one, right? Everybody makes jokes about it and this and that, and it's all it's evil, this and that. Eighth house is Scorpio energy, right? Scorpio energy is it has to do with death. I like to say inheritance is very important here. Power struggles, sex as well, but more so the deeper parts of it. The parts of it that we don't like to talk about in public. It's generally anything taboo, transformation, and not the happy, fun transformation. Transformation is tough, it's difficult, it's hard because you're leaving the things that make you feel comfortable, the things that used to be, and you're shedding to bring in a better version of yourself. And a lot of the time that shedding does not feel good. It hurts and it's difficult. So this is why transformation is a part of the general themes for eighth house. And the thing about it is, so Pluto rules the eighth house, right? Pluto, any transits you ever go through with Pluto, when they touch you, has a lot to do with transformation. I once had it personally touch my Venus and my moon, and it was a very interesting time. This is more advanced, and we'll learn about it as time goes on. But if you know anything about, what we're talking about here, Pluto, not that long ago, was in Capricorn. So if you were first house ascendant, your ascendant was in Capricorn, you felt that, transformation of you as a person as a whole because it's in your first house. And the same thing for people who have Aquarius risings right now, because Pluto just entered it not too long ago. So they're going to get that feel, soon, if not already touching it. If for someone, for it to affect an Aquarius rising literally right now, it would probably have to be right along the line. That's the wrong place. I got to go to Aquarius. It probably would be right along this line. Their ascendant would have to be like right here or something, right? But point is, once it enters your first house, you feel it, and you generally change, and it can be difficult, but it's a positive change overall, and generally you'll never be the same again. But this is what this is all about. The universe cares for you, and it has a lot to give you, and I firmly believe that we have choices in life, and we can move in the way that we wish to move, but ultimately enough, there are certain things we must complete, certain requisites, and it's up to you how easy you want to make those things. You're gonna have to go through the lessons you're meant to go through, regardless of if you want to go through them or not. And it's up to you if you succeed through those lessons. I'm not saying everything in life is perfect and this and that. There's gonna be things that we can't necessarily get past, and that's okay. But Pluto has to do with all of that, and that's eighth house. Other people's money as well. Make that important note. Also, I don't know if I said it. Just want to make sure. Going back to seventh house, um, Venus rules the seventh house as well, just like Venus rules Taurus, right? Same sort of thing. Yeah. So next up, ninth house. Ninth house is Sagittarius energy, ruled by Jupiter. Fire energy. Um, has to do with religion, travel, foreign experiences, higher education. Um, has some element of pride involved with it. I would say generally, I usually look at it for religion and higher learning and like I said, just foreign experiences. Let's say your Venus is there, or it's in your ninth house. You might be attracted to people who are not of your culture or who are foreign to your country or whatever it may be. You may end up marrying someone like that. You may end up being with someone like that. You may end up finding the love of your life, while you're in another country, while you're away from home. And a lot obviously has more to do with the chart, but I think that is a generally true. Your partner most likely is going to be different from you, not different from you like in terms of Aquarius different, but they're going to be different from you. They're not going to be of your culture, and it also has a lot to do with how you like to travel and the places you enjoy and just, foreign experiences, really. So moving on, 10th house. 10th house is right here. Your MC, your midheaven, right? It has to do with public image, how people see you in the public. Just like you have your ascendant is how people see you from the outside, right? And how you see the world. When a person is standing in front of you, obviously you're seeing their ascendant, right? But when you look at TV shows or you look at celebrities on TV that you don't know in person or you're not in person with them, let's say if you do know them, um, you're looking at their MC. It's how they end up being portrayed through social media and online and their public image and social standing and things of that nature. Whether it's good or bad, it's just how they are seen through the lens of society and through TV and social media. So, with that being said, it's the same general, you know, themes here. 10th house is Capricorn, 10th house is ruled by Saturn. I say 10th house has to do with structure, in a sense, completeness, even though 12th house is more so that. It's just 10 is a number of completion, really. So structure, buildings, the bones represents the bones, um, career, public image, social media, all that stuff. So moving on, 11th house. I didn't mean to do that. 11th house. 11th house is Aquarius energy. It's Uranus. Uranus rules it. Rules it. It depends on which type of astrology you follow. If you follow old school astrology, you follow new school astrology. But generally, I just look at it as Aquarius. But old school astrology will look at it as Saturn and Aquarius rule. I said Aquarius. I just look at it as Uranus. Saturn and Uranus would rule 11th house. But I generally just look at it as 11th house. I can see how the themes are sort of similar, but as time goes on, we have technology, we can see farther out into space and things like that. This is why these other planets are here, like Pluto, because originally 8th house used to be ruled by Mars and not Pluto. Now it's just Pluto. But I think Pluto fits better. I think it makes more sense for scorpionic energy, especially as being one myself, right? 11th house. 11th house has to do with, well, it's Aquarius energy for one. 11th house is friendships, the greater public, social networks as well, but not in the same sense as 10th house. 10th house has to do with social standing and things of that nature and social media, but not the structure of social media, just the interactions of people on there and how people interact and things like that. 11th house, it's about others, it's about the tribe, it's about your friends, it's about things of that nature. This is where I said, in terms of things that will make people attracted to each other, 11th house can do that because it kind of gives you that friendly feeling, just like the third house does. You know, they're both air signs, sort of the same thing. I'll say, generally, even though air is logical, air does tend to have to deal with people as a whole, realistically, right? Because this is the greater group and the tribe. This is neighbors and siblings, and this is, you know, marriages and other people, right? Right. So Aquarius, you know, Gemini, and Libra, all air signs. But to get back to 11th house, you know, it's Aquarius energy. Aquarius energy, Uranus energy. It's a little weird. It's a little quirky. It's a little odd. It's different. It's unique. It has a lot to do with online. If you notice this, like you could have a transit where it could be Uranus transiting something, or it could be a planet in your 11th house. Let's say Jupiter's in your 11th house and it's transiting your Venus. It's treating it. You could meet a romantic partner online, you know, because that's 11th house energy. That's 11th house themes. So moving on, 12th house, the last house of the zodiac, the one that is all encompassing of the whole zodiac, and I think it's important to say that here because generally we kind of sleep on Pisces and kind of put it back, and it's not saying put any sign back, but the thing is, Pisces, it's so much there. It's the end of the zodiac, right? And for Pisces, it really embodies deepness and the subconscious and just hidden intuitions and understandings. It's those things that we understand but don't quite understand why we understand it. It's those things we understand but don't realize that we understand it. You know, it's just things that you naturally know but you can't delve deep into it, because oftentimes when you try to dive deep into it, it's murky and it's confusing, but it's there. The information is there and it's all encompassing, right? So Pisces, at least now, is Neptune, right? Neptune rules Pisces. Neptunian energy is what it is. And sometimes the energy can be kind of spacey and loose, and it's a mutable sign, so it kind of isn't stable in a sense. It kind of is very changeable. Um, like I said, it has to do with deepness, hidden desires, sacrifice. A lot of the time, you'll notice people with a lot of Pisces will tend to be martyrs. You know, no one should be a martyr, but you know, ultimately enough, if this is when your personality, this is your characteristics, then you have times where you probably can be like that. Intuition, like I said, intuition is not inherently logical. In a sense, it is, you know, because it's psychological, and psychology is a science, but realistically, intuition is kind of just something you know. You don't know why you know it, but you know it. It's the same themes that I was talking about. But 12th house is very, very, very important. I think it doesn't get the credit it should get in terms of all the houses and how important they are, because a lot of things that fall in 12th house is hidden, you know, and it's funny how it's hidden. Meanwhile, it kind of doesn't get the credit it deserves because it's hidden in the first place, right? The themes sort of go full circle. But yeah, the houses are important. They all have their own individual, you know, importances. For me personally, like I said, I think the four angles are probably the most important houses generally. You know, they affect your life as a whole, and they separate everything into quadrants. You know, obviously quadrant one right here, quadrant two, quadrant three, quadrant four, and they sort of carry over the themes for everything within your chart. So, have any questions? Have anything you don't understand? Anything that you wish to speak about, or just comment in general? Leave it down below. You appreciate the video, please subscribe. I have a lot more coming. I have a lot more going on for this. I'm gonna make a playlist about this, and for look, there's just a lot of stuff that I'm here to talk about, and a lot of stuff that I'm gonna start bringing to the surface here because I think it's important. So, you enjoyed the video, leave a like. I appreciate your presence, and thank you, and have a great day.